6:30.
Okay.
Returning to the agenda, we have proposed code amendments on a gym or fitness facility that we heard last night. Brody gave an extensive presentation about. And this is, I don't know, it's been to the committee before or council. It's been to the committee before, I think.
I was not here for that initial
Okay.
meeting you guys recommended at the town.
But Matt, you sent out an email today that I don't know if everyone's had a chance to read.
I did.
I read it.
Appreciated that he signed.
And well, let me stay where you are, but I want to ask Brody for one clarification. Last night you alluded to the fact the planning commission voted this change down, but had
Both, yeah.
but had an alternative. Now, what was the alternative? And Matt addresses this in his email because
That's a summary sheet right there of the
there's
revised.
one for each of us.
Yes. You want that?
Okay.
And then I want to be clear that every one of these, we're up to 3 proposals now. Every one of these achieves the result that Matt is looking for. It's just each one goes about it in a different way. The Planning Commission, although this hasn't gone back to them, they are the authors of this version. I have every reason.
This last one.
Correct. I have every reason to believe that they will unanimously vote for that since it was their creation. If not unanimous, it will prevail in the affirmative. So they put their preference behind this version of it, which I have not provided a recommendation on yet, but I don't have any issue with this version either. I supported one of the first 2, and I would also support this one as well.
So the difference was that what was presented to the planning commission was the kind of the dividing line was 12,000 square feet.
Version 1. That's version 1. That would change the threshold between 5,000 and 12,000 square feet.
Okay.
Can we just start with what he's trying to accomplish today? I guess.
Yeah, we'll get to that real quick. I'm just trying to, I want to understand, because in part you address what the planning commission did.
And then he says he withdrew one of them, so it's, that's
Yeah.
what I'm trying to.
So what they said is 10,000.
Yeah, so this one here, version 1 of what the Planning Commission reviewed was to change the threshold from 5,000 square feet to 12,000 square feet.
This one, okay.
Version number 2 was to make, on the third version, the only difference between the second version and the third version is the second version had a P in that box that was just permitted. You could just do it. The Planning Commission didn't feel comfortable saying you can just outright do it. They said we want to put some restrictions on that because office and service tends to be near residential districts because it's more the neighborhood commercial type things. They seem to think that they would be more supportive of allowing it with a special approval use, and they added numbers 1 and 2 under the specific conditions. So I have every reason to believe that they're going to feel way more comfortable with version 3 than they did version 2. If that makes sense, because this version 3 gives it a special approval use where version 2 was just permitted by right. The hours of operation could have been whatever they wanted to be. The size could have been more than 5,000 square feet, which could have been 50,000 square feet. They liked the control that this gave.
Why did they end on 10,000 square feet?
That was the conversation that Matt had as to what he believed was appropriate. The other thing that did is it also, the 10,000 square foot number mirrored a number that's commonly referred to in the zoning code for neighborhood businesses less than 10,000 square feet. So they just dropped it from 12 to 10 because that worked for him and it was consistent across the zoning code for 10,000 square feet.
Where did the 12,000 come from originally?
That was Matt's proposal.
Yeah.
He felt that was appropriate to help designate, but he's like, for my purposes, it doesn't
Okay.
have to be 12.
That's how we got there. Okay.
All right.
So I think what we're really talking about tonight, and I didn't see Matt's email, but I'm guessing he's dismissed version 2, which didn't have my support, didn't have the support of the Planning Commission. So you're really comparing the above 12,000 and below 12,000, which is version 1, and then the one summary sheet that I gave you here, one of which received Planning Commission recommendation against, and one which will likely have unanimous support or at least a majority support.
So the 12,000 is still special use. It just changes this to 12,000 feet?
I've written these so many times.
The 12,000 is not special use. The 12,000 and under is permitted.
Okay, so you're arguing that it should just be permitted in office and service, not special use?
Yes, under 12,000. What I had proposed at the last meeting with the commission was to withdraw the second proposal, which was just, if it's above 5,000 square feet, it's just kind of like a free-for-all. And so I agreed with the dialogue that happened of like, there should be a cap, because, you know, my understanding is what is being evaluated is what happens to the land after I use it, right? So if I sell it or if I die or whatever happens, who's gonna come in behind me, and what's the impact gonna be on those neighbors when I'm not considering that? And so that felt appropriate to withdraw that. And really what I'm trying to accomplish is the first plan that I worked with Brody on, we spent a couple hours together on kind of talking through the entire use of the property. And so the research that I did with other larger gyms, so I refer to that in the email as pay for access gyms, which I own one of those gyms down in Cincinnati, which is a 20,000 square foot box. And so we have thousands of members at a low price point. My gym here in Perrysburg in downtown we have 150 members. The price point is much higher. It's only used when there's coaching. There's always somebody leading some form of exercise or nutrition counseling. And so in the first meeting, a member of the commission didn't feel comfortable with 12,000, didn't necessarily have a clear response why. That same member of the commission proposed at the last meeting, under special use, that it is 10,000. Now, I agreed that still gets the job done. The reason that I'm here tonight is because I still think that we can accomplish the goal, and it still protects the neighbors at 12,000, the same that it does at 10. The biggest difference is, hopefully this isn't sensitive, but you looking at the land use plan. Now, I was on those meetings, and this is much less contentious than the last topic, but I believe that there was some kind of case study done of what the residents want. People love the schools, and they love the safety, and they love the small knit community. They don't love the taxes. And so I think part of that study was talking to some of the more influential business owners and what they wanted in response of taking on more tax burden, which I think kind of that last discussion is somewhat related to that, is that the business owners want the city to be more pro-business and more business-friendly. And I think that the point I want to make is having a difference of 2,000 square feet, but having to go through an extra step of getting a special permit, and like the $200 of applying for the special permit, like, I don't think that is significant to anybody. It just adds another step. And I don't think that that's necessary, because I think we get to the same goal, whether it's at 12,000 or 10,000, there's still a clear distinction of what is going to be permitted. And then the other special use I think Brody just shared was that you submit your hours of operations. And again, that is for a neighborhood gym or a community gym, or a coaching business, as I refer to my business as. We're not going to be coaching in the middle of the night, because there's not a high demand for that. We start at 5:30. And we're done by 8:30. The proposed hours of use under the special use was from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. So again, I think that we still accomplish the same thing, except that we can remove a hurdle for businesses in general that are trying to put gyms in an office and service environment.
So Matt, so I guess when I'm looking at this, it kind of seems like the conversation is the 5,000 number was kind of arbitrary to begin with. Is that fair to say? It doesn't necessarily accomplish the goal.
It served the purpose at the time. We were getting an influx of like CrossFit style gyms, and that was the threshold that they were looking for.
Yeah.
And so it was narrowly crafted to solve a problem that existed, a very specific problem at that time.
Okay, so, and then would you agree, because his email kind of talks about the box gyms and they're generally above 12,000. And I don't think 10,000 is an unreasonable number. I kind of like it, that is, that is just 10,000 and it correlates with some of our other zoning stuff. But I guess when I'm looking at the proposed charts, I'm wondering why we're still sticking with this 5,000 number if that's really not applicable anymore. To me, it should almost be, if we're gonna do permissible and special use, it should be gym less than 10,000 permissible, gym more than 10,000 special
Yeah, that's
use.
what's confusing me about this.
Yeah.
Because I
Well,
don't,
I will say that the 5,000 number isn't completely arbitrary, because if, Jim, I know you were here, and Barry, I don't know if you were or not on the committee, like I said, that still may serve a purpose, not the same purpose,
yeah,
but it solved a unique problem in some of the industrial areas.
yeah,
So
CrossFit.
it's not totally invalid, but the argument that Matt was making is that if you are really trying to separate the big box versus, we'll call it big box versus the small box gyms, that's not the number. Was that the goal? Partially, yes, but it also served another function of like directing or redirecting some of the CrossFit pop-up in the more intense gym areas. Or the smaller areas with the, tall ceilings where they're climbing ropes or throwing tires or something like that.
Okay, so why was 5,000 picked for that then?
Because that specifically
It fit for
excluded certain locations from being able to be used for those things. This was a very intentional effort. The city was trying to direct these end users to very specific things or away from other specific targets. And that 5,000 achieved that. The other thing that I'll add that Matt said is that there was talk during the planning commission meeting about just simply submitting hours. The way that it came across in the motion is that there would be hard start and stop hours for those gyms. So, for example, this isn't, we're doing this for the benefit of Matt's property, generally. But if there were another office and service property somewhere else in the city, which there are others, and somebody wanted to open an Anytime Fitness, the thought behind those hours of operation are, there are people that work out at all hours of the day, 4 o'clock in the morning, that's not me, but I don't work out at all, but the thought was if these are in neighborhood settings, which the office and services are, somebody shows up at 3:30 and gonna wanna go work out, pulling in with headlights, slamming car doors. I gave the example of Planet Fitness. We received complaints from people who live, it's probably quail and pheasant.
Oh, yeah, back there.
In that area, that the truck drivers are members, so they're coming up idling trucks, they're going and working out, showering, all hours of the night because they're over-the-road truck drivers. So I understand the value of having the opportunity to limit those hours of operations in certain zoning districts. So, like I said, they all achieve Matt's goal.
Those are industrial, right? We're talking about office and service. Were we trying to prevent that in office service zoning before?
Perhaps not. I don't know that it came up. I mean, they were looking at every property they could possibly look at, so I don't recall, but I know we looked at a lot of industrial.
Yeah, because those warehouses or CrossFit type, I would generally think are I1, I2. And office and service is generally a building. I guess, I know the property that he's talking about, that does have a more industrial, pole barn feel. But I think that's a unique property anyway.
All right, so now I think I'm finally up on options 2 and 3. So what you're saying the planning commission would accept is that a gym more than 5,000 is permitted special approval over, but special approval in OS. And then the 2 further conditions are in OS, it can't exceed 10,000, and its hours of operation are limited from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Correct.
Now, the property we just dealt with Pete Gwynn and all those owners right down there across from Costco, did we change that to OS? Or,
That was OS. You changed it to C3 community shopping.
that's right, because that's when we learned OS is a really extraordinarily narrow category.
It might be one of the most restricted categories of
It's pretty much becoming extinct.
Yeah, but you apparently have a location in OS. You told us that last time too.
Yep.
So, I don't know I'm not sure I see a big difference between 10 and 12,000 square feet.
I don't necessarily either. But if I'm looking, so this is the one that was approved last night? or the last planning
February
commission.
24th.
That is we had basically a work session
Uh-huh.
on that, and that's the proposal that was drafted out of that work session. It is going to be presented back to the planning commission for consideration. They didn't take action on that, they just simply drafted it and said, bring it back to us at our next meeting.
So this is the one we can consider.
Um,
I guess what can we consider
Yeah,
tonight?
you-
This one?
Yeah, you should consider this one, and then the other one's been withdrawn, so.
And we can modify this to even put, I'm still trying to understand the planning and zoning committee as it relates to the planning commission. So are we allowed to amend this without sending it back to planning commission? Since they already considered it and not recommended it?
I guess what I'll say is that procedurally, we have gone through a process where something has been recommended to you. City council, because the planning commission and HLC and the BZA are subordinate to you, they're essentially tools in your toolbox.
Mhm.
You can choose to use them as you see fit. If you want to make an amendment, and send it back to them, for them to send it back to you, my opinion is that you can do that. If you choose not to, and you just simply want to modify a recommendation and move it forward, they're a resource for you. My opinion would be that you don't necessarily have to do that. I think on code changes like that, you should use the citizen group of volunteers as much as you
Yeah.
can. They do all the heavy lifting for you guys. But I don't know if the code specifically says one way or another. I mean, we have the
I'm
benefit-
I'm just honestly trying to understand the
We have the
dynamic, because I
benefit
know we
tonight of-
consider stuff and it goes back that they've already, so
it's-
I was honestly
I
more
think
questioning
our
logistics.
arborvitae's went back a couple times.
That might have been more.
I hope to God this is not another arborvitae.
I think you guys are just deflecting that back, deflecting blame.
But I think technically the ordinance says we can modify.
That's what I was trying to explain, is that you can accept, reject, or modify, and kind of move it forward. And what I was going to say is, not to put Becky on the spot, but she's a member of our planning commission, in case
Yeah.
you forgot.
Well, you just called her a tool.
Let the record
And I
reflect.
appreciate that, Brady.
A resource.
I don't like the way that you talk.
I think
People,
Homer's-
to people, Tim.
The tape will tell the tale. Okay, but, I mean, you're ready to go on this thing. You don't, I'm not saying that can drive everything we do, but I think in fairness,
We started the process in November,
Yeah.
for the record.
And I'm just trying to get my head around the balance between what's acceptable to you and what planning and zoning would like to see happen. And I mean, because you're okay at 10,000,
Correct.
you would prefer 12,000.
Yes.
And why is that?
So that was based on the research of these other gyms. I contacted the owners, I contacted the landlords, and to the point, these are all above 15,000. So I'm like, all right, so where do we draw that line? And I mean, to be honest, like, it's fairly arbitrary. But for gym, so like I'm only needing 7,500 square feet, but it's, again, when I sat down with Brody, he explained the process very well. I'm like, all right, so if we're gonna make this zoning amendment proposal or request, it shouldn't be just self-serving. It shouldn't just be for this property. I understand, like, I want that for, my business, but like other gym owners that are gonna be providing other services, what if they need more space to deliver the services that they're gonna be providing in a similar format, where we're not bringing thousands of people to a location where it borders, single-family residential. So and I think I'll just be transparent, I had asked, and I understand why it was not approved, but I asked if we could simply swap the special use, and I could withdraw both option 1 and option 2, because it was something that the commission agreed to, and I feel like it is reasonable. I do think that it does not align 100% with what the land use plan is trying to accomplish with, let's be more pro-business. And I think that the city in a lot of ways is pro-business, but this is a hurdle that is not necessarily needed for the process. And I see that as as my business grows and I come to more of these meetings and have more of these discussions and sit in on more of the meetings, I do think that there are things that could be more streamlined. And so that was what I had proposed. They said that it can't be done because the public hearing notice for last night was already issued, even though it was still for the same purpose, right? And so I guess in the spirit of the principle, the reason I showed up tonight, and I had shared that I shared this with Brody, I wanted to move forward with this because it's still, option 1 still accomplishes the same goal as option 3 with 2,000 extra square feet, and we skip a step. And I think it aligns with what the business owners have asked with the land use plan. And so out of principle, that is why I'm still here for option 1.
And how many parcels do we currently have that are office and service? It's literally like 5, isn't it?
It's like Matuzak's
It's like-
office, it's a couple of those banks
I mean,
at the South Boundary.
It's probably less than a dozen to the entire community, and they're sprinkled.
Yeah.
Just,
Well, we just took some off of 25.
Right, yeah.
Into C4.
Yeah, they're slowly transitioning to C3,
and the
C4.
reality is that the existing development is not likely to be conducive to running a gym or anything
Yeah.
like that.
Well, I was thinking like Jim's office.
You know, the old bank with the drive-through, like, you're not gonna run a gym out of a,
Yeah,
Well, then the Black Diamond was office and service, that got switched to C3.
Yeah. I'm just, I'm kind of thinking along the lines the planning commission was. I mean, if like a Planet Fitness is 15,000 square feet, 12,000 is still pretty big.
Well, and the Planet Fitness is closer to 40,000 square feet.
Oh.
But the smallest of the gyms, which is Revitalize and Maumee, they were at 15,000. But
Revitalize is the one across from that church.
they are,
I think that's LA Fit.
Oh, yeah, that's
Used to
It's
be-
LA.
or just- no, it's-
Revitalize is in the plaza off of Dussel with like Buffalo Wild Wings and the UPS store. It's right off the exit. It's like across from Smoky Bones. So that's the smallest of those gyms that I spoke to. And again, like a Planet Fitness, significantly larger. Same thing with like a Crunch Fitness up in Toledo. And so I was looking at like, where's the barrier to some of these smaller gyms, or I guess the smaller of the large gyms.
But Matt, how big is, do you have any idea how big Fort Mag's CrossFit is?
Maybe 4,000 square feet.
Okay. I'm just trying to gauge
Yeah.
these different, in Planet Fitness in Perrysburg?
I think it's closer to 40.
Okay. Jesus. Okay.
So what does planning and zoning, the office think?
I knew that was coming.
Well, you recommended it to planning commission, it sounds.
That was prior to,
Code 3.
I think the logic made sense for the information that we had at the time. And that's all you can do is do the best with the information that you have. If you were asking in my professional capacity, which one of these 3 proposals provides the best outcome for the city, it is the newly drafted one from the planning commission. It would have my recommendation from my office. It would have planning commission support, and I think that says something.
And what's the timeline on getting this through? Because that's another concern of your site, I assume.
We can pass it next meeting, right?
Well, we have not conducted, and that's part of what Mac's complaint was, that we have not conducted a public hearing on this. And he had asked the question to the planning commission if he could simply use the public hearing that we had last night as a placeholder for gym and fitness facilities, generally speaking. And the answer that the mayor provided and that I had suggested is, as much as that makes sense to the average person, because of people may have called in or inquired and researchers and said, I don't have a problem with that proposal, but they might have one with this proposal. They need to specifically know, what the contents of that amendment is. You can't lure somebody in under one thing and say, oh, just kidding, we switched it, the night before.
And of course, the additional challenge of that is that nobody showed up for it.
But
Correct.
is it? But we can amend that after a public hearing and then vote on it as a council, so I don't understand how that actually, that logic
Yeah,
flows.
why does it use the word modify? If you really
Yeah.
can't modify, you got to restart the whole process.
That's also a fair question. But somebody did ask me the question on timing. So this would be an issue that would go on the March 31st agenda item, which would result in a public hearing on April 5th, which means that we would hear that here on April 6th, and then the following
Here at
Tuesday.
council?
P and Z committee. And then council would be the Tuesday after April 6th, which is like April.
It's the 19th.
9th.
And we started on November 16th.
And how much does that cost you, that, though? If you don't have to answer that clearly, But like, does that cost, is that financially?
Yeah, I mean, I have
Time is money.
I have a dual mortgage payment right now, and for the space that I'm currently in, plus the new space, and the way that and this isn't your problem, but just explaining for context, the way that my commercial loan for the construction and the renovation of the new property, I can't draw on that until there's shovels in the ground. So like all the architect work, all of the extra surveys, like I'm paying out of pocket. And it's held up. I can't even submit a preliminary because the preliminary that we've drawn is outside of the 5,000 square feet. And Brody did share that it'll catch up. So like I could submit a preliminary and I could submit a final. But based on the meetings that I've seen over the last 5 months, 6 months, to get familiar with the process, there's always feedback in a preliminary. So I don't want to pay the architect to draw the final and then get feedback and then have to pay him again. And so again, when I refer to pro-business and making things, I mean, we're passing things back and forth like a ping pong ball of like, it's going to have to go back here and they're going to have to listen to it here. And Barry, to your point, nobody showed up last night. And granted, I know that there's processes that have to be followed. I don't know if anybody cares outside of myself and potentially future gym owners in the future.
And even to piggyback off what you said, I don't think there's a decision that will hold up the process of getting through planning commission. At this point, if something was to pass according to Brody's timeline in April, and that's when we told him he could still submit both. I would recommend that you get us those preliminary and final site plan drawings as soon as possible. That way our office can go over any deficiencies or anything that might come up. Typically, those are the people who submit those to our office ahead of time for us to review and have discussion for you so you can make changes. Those are the ones who typically get through the planning commission in one meeting. Okay. Even if it's with conditional approval, that'll still allow you to submit construction plans to the city. It won't hold up the process going forward. So I think you're still in that timeline. If this was to go to council in April and get passed or voted on in April, you're still able to submit the preliminary and final, and we can still try to get you pushed forward in the same timeline.
I think the date was April 28th.
Yes, that's correct.
But again, there is risk on my end of if somebody on the commission doesn't like something on the plans, regardless of the feedback from your office, and they say, hey, change this, then I have to go back and I have to pay again for another drawing of the final, if I were to submit both of them at the same time. And I think that you guys have the ability to skip a step or not add a step and shrink that time period.
Well, here's my thought. I'll try it out. I'll say it out loud and see if it works.
See how it goes.
I'll put it in form of a motion to modify the decision of the planning commission in the manner set forth in this document that had additional criteria determined by the planning commission, and to let that proceed to council, subject, I guess, to the approval of the law director.
So basically, you're taking this, turning it into this.
Yes.
By modifications, which we're allowed to do.
By modification.
All right.
Now, if she says we can't do that, then I guess we'll just have to live with moving along as quickly as we can, and you'll coordinate with Matt.
Right. And that's what I say, it won't deter either way. Only because we've already missed the deadline for the March. We have to have it 30 days in advance so we can give make the correct notices to the media. The code requires that it's 30 days to make those notices. So we've already passed that threshold for the media. So he'd still be looking at the April meeting regardless. There's no way we can get him.
But unless this is,
if we
modification works.
We still won't be able to get him on the March meeting.
He wouldn't need a March meeting. We
Well,
already had the
no,
public.
to submit to the planning commission for preliminary and final site plan.
Oh, gotcha.
That's true.
So that's what I said, it doesn't move that date
Good point.
either way.
Good point. Okay.
So I don't know that,
Modifying helps.
I agree with Mark.
Because it would still go to the March. Well, this will come back for your April meeting, or this one, the one with the special approval use, can come back to your April meeting, is that correct? Do I have that right, or does there have to be a public hearing for this as well?
We can do it out of order. You can conduct the P and Z committee meeting prior to a public hearing. You've always just done it afterwards to react, but
Council is on the 5th. The next planning and zoning is the 6th. Could we not have a public hearing on the 5th? If we have to,
there is a public hearing scheduled on the 5th.
but not for this though.
Um,
I know the president announced it, but I didn't think it was regarding this.
It is regarding this one, yeah.
Oh, clear.
Of next month, of
5th of April.
Of April.
5th of April.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then they can vote on it the following week.
Yeah.
I think there's a council meeting that, or the 19th or something like
So,
that.
Yeah.
Council could theoretically approve this on April 19th, if we don't make any exceptions. If you just process all three versions going
And that's
forward.
before he could submit his
But
site plans.
you're
anyway.
saying we can't do that here in March?
Correct.
Correct. So I told him he could still submit the site plan and everything, we can get it on the agenda. That way everything is already advertised, even though you guys haven't voted on it yet. And then if I don't see that there will be any discussion, but if there's discussion, we can always just bump it out.
He would basically, essentially be submitting in anticipation of one of these three being approved
Yeah, which,
by April, prior to the planning commission meeting in April.
It's similar to what Buckeye State Bank did.
So, and Matt, did you know all these dates before you came here?
I did.
So you're here because you believe in this in principle, more
I
so
be-
then, okay.
Yes, and if I could offer a suggestion, what I think, again, in the spirit or the principle of being pro-business friendly, if you have the ability to modify and pass something through, to me, where I think the common ground is, if it's gonna match the rest of the land use plan that has the language of 10,000 square feet for the neighborhoods, modify the first version, change it from 12 to 10, push it through, and this one's still gonna be out there. Option 3 is still gonna,
Yeah.
I'm still gonna come to all the meetings and listen to all the other things, which is fine. Because it's informing me about the community in which I work, and I live in the township for the record. But I think that still makes sense because it doesn't require a special use, which adds a hurdle, which is, again, something that I think the business owners want less hurdles of. And so, especially for such a limited zoning classification in the city, which you guys just discussed, I think that would probably be the most common ground, at least in my eyes. I don't know if you guys will see it the same way, but that's what I would propose.
the one the planning commission looked at, if I'm reading this right, gyms less than 12,000 square feet are permitted. Okay, so there's no special approval use.
Yeah, so if that was modified down to 10,000 and there's no special use, I think it still accomplishes the same thing, other than having to ask for a special use and submitting the hours.
Okay, well, that's kind of where I'm parting from what you're thinking, because I'm thinking if it's whatever the size cutoff is, if it's larger than that, I think it should be a special approval.
I agree with you.
I mean, I know that's an additional hurdle for the business, but we use that special approval use in a lot of situations like this, just to, if you're landing a use that's near a residential area, neighbors, they're not interested now because it's all hypothetical.
Right.
When you drop that use into their lap, and then we notify them because they live within 200 feet, if we do that on a special approval use and they're coming in, we use it as a mechanism just to typically impose certain conditions, to deal with lighting, dumpsters, blah, blah, blah. So I'm kind of, I do like this, that I think it should be, if you get beyond the real mini gyms, there should be a special approval use. So I'd like to do this for you right now, and move it up even faster, but I'm not in favor of that.
Well, I want to make sure that there's not confusion, because I think that the way that it's drafted, unless I misunderstood.
So are you arguing, like, you're this with the 5,000, you're good with the new
I'm
planning?
good with this.
Okay,
Um,
with the 5,000 number.
With the 5,000, with the special caveat down here that they won't exceed 10,000 and no less. I'd be good on a variation on the theme here, that if it's more than 12,000, if you make it a special approval use, I'd be good with it there. I don't think 10 versus 12 is terribly consequential.
Gotcha, so instead of their language being 10,000 at the bottom, you would make it 12 up here? The shall not exceed?
Or I'd take this and I'd make a special approval. I can go either way. I think this is better, particularly if the planning commission spent time, and I think what they said makes sense.
Well, yeah, but the big difference is the number here,
I know.
5,000. So you're fine with this being 12,000 permitted, less than 12,000, and then special use above 12,000?
The way that it's
Oh.
drafted.
I just want to make sure I'm on the
Yeah,
same
yeah,
page.
Okay.
Okay, because that's what I was asking, is on this chart, I agree with this, P and special use. I don't necessarily understand why this is 5,000 instead of
Okay.
10,000 based on what, or 10,000 to make it similar to the other commercial spaces, or the 12,000
Yeah.
because of the nature of the gyms.
Yeah. So you'd say here, instead of 5, you'd make it 10,
I would say
12.
10. I would,
Okay.
I think that's a piecemeal, kind of, it makes it correlate with some of our other zoning. It's not necessarily arbitrary, it
Well, that-
addresses what he's talking about
That's
still.
where we come up with 10,000 anyway.
Yeah.
With some of our other buildings.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say shall not exceed 10,000,
Mhm.
but only applies if it's special use, maybe,
Mhm.
shall it exceed 10,000. So I agree with the same thing, but I think that should be a 10
Okay,
instead of a
that's good.
5.
I'm good with that.
No, I am too. Now, does this fall under the modification provision?
I don't know. I'm getting,
Well, yeah, we just do this chart, change this to 10,000, add an S.
yeah, and that was the other way to do
Yeah.
it.
So we'll take the one he's got right now, we'll make sure we're getting out of the way of the speed of this, I don't care what date it is. If it ends up the same date, it ends up the same date, but
So I just want to make sure I'm following. So under 10,000, it's permitted. Over 10,000, it's special use, and it's modifying the first one.
Yeah.
Fantastic job.
Somebody mark up one.
Thank you.
it's this, it's just changing that.
Yeah, just change
But-
one number.
All right, so but what we're doing is, this is the one that's in front of us tonight, this is the one that had a public hearing.
Right,
So this should technically be the one we change,
okay.
to add a special use,
To modify.
these
We're
modifications.
modifying. Right.
Do you want me to tape it all together?
No, so ignore this, just write
I'll
a
do
message.
it. But we need these special requests
Can I
specifically.
ask a question?
Finally, the committee members are understanding, and zoning doesn't.
Tim, so what you guys are doing then is, because we've already had a public hearing on the one that the planning commission did not agree with.
Right.
You're moving the language from the one that the planning commission just came up with that hasn't had a public hearing into the one that you already had the public hearing on, so that it can proceed forward.
We're modifying, using your language on the meeting that you just had.
So you're just doing what I just said?
Yes.
Yes,
We're modifying though, that's the
Okay.
operative word.
so we're still trying to use your input, I think, is.
I'm just trying, I haven't
Yeah.
seen the final draft of what we.
Yeah.
Here, do you want to look at it, Becky?
We haven't either.
That's not-
We're
that's not-
Yeah, that's-
You guys. I just want to make sure I understand what you mean.
So,
That's the third, that's
This is what we-
that's what came out of the planning commission.
so take this,
Add an S.
so this is 10,
I'm not sure what we're doing.
10, to change these two. Yeah, so 10,000, because this is what's in front of us right now, right? All right, then this is getting added. And then,
I don't have to read it. I don't have to present this as planning commission.
correct, and then these specific are still getting added below that.
I don't
But this
know.
is gonna
Wait
be,
to see what he's
shall
writing.
not
At least that's
exceed
my understanding.
10,000 unless authorized by special use permission, permitting. Does that make sense?
These conditions,
That we have down.
yes.
Okay. So it's not really changing from what's come out of planning commission, you're just modifying.
Yes.
To reflect.
Because just.
You had it right,
Turn, don't, I mean, tell me, but,
you had it right.
okay, because the big hang up in planning commission is that the majority of planning commission, well, everybody voted for it, I guess, or suggested it, wanted to make sure there was a special approval.
Yeah, and that's getting added.
Yeah.
And you're, as far as I'm concerned, I think they're probably on the same page. You're never speaking out of turn,
Well, I
Becky.
I won't overstep it down.
Once Brody's done, he passed that down so that Mark and I know.
It's exactly what you did. It's this, with this added.
Over here.
Exactly, it's taking,
Hold this up, hold this part here.
yeah, I did it on what he has proposed more than us, but I just changed all that to 10. And then
With
this
the
is,
addition of a special approval.
yep, and then this paragraph's getting moved here. But it's gonna say shall not exceed 10,000 square feet unless authorized under special use. Because we have to address, it can't exceed 10,000 feet based on what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you need one, but I'll let the draftsman take it.
Yeah, well, this is what he wrote on, so I'm gonna send that back. Do you get it?
I'm
I
good.
got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brody's giving up. He's just beaten down.
This is gonna be the Brody plan when we're all set.
The
Brody plan is gonna be the Brody plan.
Brody plan too.
Out of here.
Oh, my goodness. Man, I'm getting slap happy. I'm too tired.
All right. So we may be able to do this at the next council meeting.
Okay,
We'll have to get
That's-
Kate's input and
that's on the 15th.
2 weeks from yesterday,
What time is that at? Is it?
6:30.
6:30.
What was the date on that?
15th.
So if you can need the lawyer with Kate, just to have her, help her understand modification, then call her.
Modify is a big word, very expansive concept.
Yeah. We as lawyers love words like that.
Yeah, modify is perfect.
Amend, modify, all those.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
All right, that's it for you, Matt? I think,
right, thanks,
so we
Matt.
recommending that modification,
Yeah.
3-0? I said.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. God, I'm glad I don't have Angela's job. Good God.
Thank you for condensing this minutes in advance.
All right, you guys, boy,
Please make sure the record does include the quote that people don't like the way Brody talks.
Put that in bold, please.
All right,
Is there anything else?
I don't think there's, you can talk to us
Thanks,
later
man.
in a second.
last item, I think Barry's got to abstain on anyways.
I do.
The
So I'm just gonna leave, no, I'm just kidding.
Rotary Community Park Master Plan, I thought it was fine.
I thought it was fine.
I mean,
Recommend.
I can't believe how much you guys have done over it, you know.
It looks great. Thank you for the work on that.
Years of work.
Years of work and a lot of money, and Rotary should be very much congratulated.
So this is going to be a recommendation to city council to approve the amendment to the master plan.
Yes. Yep.
Got that, Angela?
All right, with that, we're adjourned.
Second?
Second, third.
Virginia and John Hagan's trading.
Should have just stuck it in your mailbox.